Hello, welcome back to Going Walkabout. Today we're going to cover an area that didn't get a lot of attention yet. I'll have my phone here and I'll show you what I mean. Now, if we go to the app and we go to the middle tab, we see this really ugly second view controller. And of course we want to have notifications there. And that's what we're going to do today. Notifications are important for our user engagement. We want our users to return to the app. So today we're going to implement notifications. I had to take a couple of steps to get that working. The first step, creating a cloud function that actually creates records in the data store for the notifications. And that is what I'm going to show you first. So here we see the cloud function that creates the records. It's a cloud function that works on creating a trip post. Here we see on the create of the trip and the post. We collect the user and the message from the post, and then we query for all the followers of this trip. And as you remember, we store that in the trip users. So we get all the trip users for the particular trip. We walk through that whole list. So we follow the snapshot. We check if the follower ID is not the user who is posting, because you don't want to send notifications to yourself. And then for all the other users, we create in the batch a new notification. That is on a created date. It's the date when the post was created. We store the trip, we store some information about the post and the user, and we set a red mark to false. We will use that later so that we can keep track of which notifications are read and which are not yet read. And then we commit that whole batch, and it is actually creating the records. It's very simple, so let's have a look how that shows in action. Now, in order to show that in action, I have to do two things. First, I will show you the data store with the user that is going to receive notifications, and we'll see a new notification created, and we'll do that from the simulator. Now here we have the simulator with our regular trip. It is the latest trip, and if we check this trip, it has actually a guest as follower, and what we see on the screen for the user here, that is actually the guest. So let's go here and let's create a post. We do a very simple post and we say it's a demo time. We save this. This should trigger our user function. And if everything goes alright, we should see something disappearing here. Now probably the user function is a little bit old, or it is cold, so it needs to start, so it might take a little bit more time before we can actually see it happening. The guest with the notifications, and there it appeared. And if we go and search through, we will find it's demo time, and it's not yet read, and it's on the 8th of July. So it took a little bit more time than I anticipated, but that is because I haven't been using the function a lot. They're cold, so it needed to start, and that's what you get the first time. When it's all fully in production, you won't have this issue because there's notifications being created all the time. Now, the next thing, of course, we need to do is to make sure that we can visualize these notifications on the screen. And in order to do that, we need to create a model to receive the notifications, and we need to create a list. So we go to Xcode, and here in Xcode, we actually have a few things we need to deal with. We have the notifications view controller. That is the view controller that is going to show the notifications. We set the title bar, we set a refresh control. We don't want to see empty rows. We're going to fetch data, we'll get into a minute. Goes into the notification list, and we update that. And when we have data, we set the number of notifications, and we set the notification on the table view cell. It's relatively straightforward and simple to do. If we go to the notification cell, and this was interesting for me because it was the first time I was actually using an attributed string, so that took a little bit extra time to get this working the way I want, because I want to have parts of the string showing in bold. So it's one string with sections being bold to put a little bit more emphasis on that. Now, how I did that, I have the notifications. When that is set, I check if I have a user, trip, or post. I set the image of the user who created the post, and I collect some attributes, and I fiddle around a little bit with the attributed string. I found a nice formatting function, so that we can have a user posted in trip the text of the post, and we collect that, and we set that, and we set the date. Let's look at the result in the simulator. I had to run a different simulator because of a different user. As you can see here, we log in as a guest user and we go to the trips of this user and we actually see that the user isn't having any of their own trips, it's just following one of the trips here. And if we go to the notifications, we nicely see the notification list. And the most recent one, it's demo time, is on top. Those are a few days older that I did while I was developing this. And the next thing we want to do is to make sure that if we click on one of those trips, that we actually navigate to that trip. So let's dive into that and let's get that shown as well. Now here we're back in Xcode again. And we are in the notification view controller where we need to catch clicking on the table cell. So here in the did select row of the table view of the notification list, we get the notification, we get the trip, and then we fetch the most recent trip information. This is important because the information of the trip might have been changed since that notification was received. And we need to do that in terms of dealing with permissions, etc. So we fetch that trip and then we perform a seek that shows actual story. Now let's have a look in the simulator how that is actually looking. And we have the notification list here again, and if we click on this notification, we nicely navigate to the list of the story, so that you can go directly to the whole story and see what happened in that particular trip that that user you're following is doing. And that works nice. But of course, we also want to detect if the trip has been read or not, because there's a lot of notifications and you're only interested in those notifications you didn't read yet. Now, if you paid well attention in the beginning, when we created the notification, we also set a flag, what was called read, to false. So when we retrieve the notifications, all the trips are not yet read, and we can do something to mark them that they show differently. So let's implement that, and then when we click on it, we set the read mark to true, and we can render the trip list in such a way that you can clearly see which one has been read and which one hasn't been read. So here in the simulator we see the same trip again. If we go to the notifications, you see that it's changed. There's a little bit of a marker here indicating that these are not yet read. This is the first user interface proposal. This might change, but for now this will do. Now when we have these markers, they are set based on the red flag in the notification. So if we go here to that particular notification cell, we can hide or show based on reading the notification, that indicator. And in the table view controller, once we click on that trip, so if we select the row again, we'll update the notification and we set read is true, and then we fetch the trip and continue as it is. So if I go back to the simulator here, and if I'm going to read this notification, two things will happen. Of course, we set this flag to red, and the second thing is that we of course navigate to the trip. So we've navigated to the trip, and now if we navigate back, you will see that is actually disappearing because the list is refreshed. And since we have stored this red mark in the data store, if you have any other device that is connecting to the same trip, also the read marks will disappear there, so it synchronizes nicely over devices, and that's actually what you want, because it's very disturbing if you have notifications that you read everything but you open the trip or the app on another device and you still have a lot of unread messages. When we're busy with this and when we are doing it anyway, let's go and have a look at this one. It also nicely navigates, but for the fun of it, I also implementing deleting the notification, and the notification is deleted. So if you feel I don't want to keep all the notifications, you can also delete that. And that's just an extra bonus on top of this functionality. Now, it would be nice if we could also show the number of unread notifications in the tab bar below. And yes, I want to implement that, but it is a little bit more tricky than it looks like. Now, probably the best way to do that is storing the number of unread messages on the server using a cloud function to keep that aggregated number maybe in the user record. But that might result in a lot of updates of that particular record, so I need to investigate that. And the alternative is doing it on the client, but then you have the risk that, let's say you have hundreds of notifications, you don't want to retrieve them all, Currently I retrieve all notifications, but of course in the future I will implement a paging mechanism that you only get the most recent 50 or something. And then you could miscount that number of unread messages. So probably the best is keeping track of that number on the server with a cloud function, but I don't know yet what is the most efficient way to implement that. But it will come later. And then when we have that, of course, we also want to send notifications to the device as push notifications, because then you really get the user interaction that you're looking for. That is also something I need to implement later, because I first need to have my developer account up to par and have that all organized, and we do that. And that's also a little bit tricky to do it efficiently. If you look at the cloud function we had to create all those notification records, that was quite easy. But in order to also send notifications, push notifications, we also need all the push notification tokens, if we use Firebase cloud messaging, to collect them. And where do we store them? Because if we're going to store them in the followers table, that also might get a little bit messy in terms of number of updates on the same record. So I need to dive into that, how to do that efficiently as well. But that is also something that is coming. For now, this is what we did in notifications. I hope you liked this video, so please subscribe and like. And if you didn't like the video, subscribe anyway, because the next one will be better for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.